This is ChangeMakers with Katie Gore, finding the right solutions for the affordable housing community.
Today's ChangeMaker is Ismael Guerrero, the president and CEO at Mercy Housing, the nation's largest affordable housing nonprofit organization. He's in charge of creating stable, vibrant, and healthy communities for 41 states. Ismael, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you, Katie. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
You've recently become the president and CEO around July, and you bring 25 years of groundbreaking achievements in community development and affordable housing. You have pioneered the coupling of healthcare and housing innovation, as well as success with mixed income communities. But we can't begin without mentioning that you took over Mercy Housing about 1 month into the pandemic and before the country shut down. What was that transition like?
It's been a really interesting transition for sure, especially stepping in to lead the Mercy team, which serves 20 plus states. So my staff is spread across the country, really from the southeast to the northwest. To be in a virtual space for the first several months, while I'm trying to get to know the people, the properties, and our partners across the country is a unique experience when you have to do it all via Zoom and Teams meetings.
And you've had some pretty big shoes to fill.
Oh my, yes. And for me, Mercy Housing is a bit of a coming home event because I was previously working at Mercy from 2000 to about 2003. And so, as you speak about having big shoes to fill, my immediate predecessor, Jane Graff, who was the previous CEO, but with Mercy Housing for 30 plus years. And then before Jane, Sister Lillian really led the organization almost from its inception. And I had the great fortune of knowing both Sister Lillian and Jane when I worked at Mercy in early 2000s. And so, just had the wonderful experience of knowing them as people, as leaders, and as mentors in a way. So it's really exciting to be back in the Mercy family and leading this organization, which is really doing tremendous work across the country.
What specifically brought you back to Mercy Housing? Because I know you previously had served as the vice president, director of real estate development. So was there something specific that brought you back?
In many ways, what attracted me and it got me excited about returning to Mercy was, in some ways, the prior decade that I had spent working at the Housing Authority and seeing the great work that we were doing in Denver, really making the city a great place to live, impacting neighborhoods, impacting our residents, our people in a very positive way, and getting very creative about how we're doing affordable housing development. And I saw many of those same things happening at Mercy Housing, but on a much grander scale at a national level. Saw some of the same innovation, the same commitment to the mission, and was inspired to be able to take the lessons, the experiences, even the relationships that I had developed locally and nationally at the Denver Housing Authority, and being able to leverage that as a leader at Mercy Housing, Inc.
So what is the development goal currently for Mercy Housing?
At Mercy Housing, at our core, we are an affordable housing developer, providing new affordable housing opportunities for the residents who really need that most around the country. So we have a very ambitious goal, even though we're already the largest nonprofit affordable housing provider in the country. We have a very ambitious goal over the next 5 years of adding another 6,000 plus units to our portfolio, but also, and as importantly, preserving or rehabbing, reinvesting in over 3,000 units of our current portfolio to make sure that even our existing housing is as high quality, healthy places to live as the new units that we're constructing.
That is exactly what we've been talking about on several of our prior podcasts, the balance of trying to create new housing while preserving existing and really making sure that you've kind of got this push, but not neglect of the current stock. So 6,000, like you said, is a very ambitious goal. What other things come into play as you go forward with this development? What technological innovations or what other strategic decisions are happening for those 6,000 units as you guys move forward?
At the end of the day, what we learned at Mercy Housing is that while we're a national organization, housing solutions are really local. They really need to be responsive to the communities, the neighborhoods, the cities that we're in. And so that's why we have, a great team. We have 5 regional offices around the country, from San Francisco to the Seattle office to an office in Chicago, Atlanta, and in Denver. So each of those, our development teams are actively working with local partners, local providers, local leaders to really design the housing solutions, bring the housing developments that are most needed in those communities. And that may be from senior housing in the San Francisco area to more permanent supportive housing in Chicago, quality family housing in the Southeast. It really varies by region. One of the things that really sets Mercy Housing apart, and that why we're successful, is the partnerships that we have in those communities and at a national level. In particular, we have very strong partnerships with our strategic healthcare partners. Many of the larger Catholic healthcare systems that provide healthcare and investments in the communities that they serve. And then, as you know, our history is that we were founded back in 1981 by the Sisters of Mercy of Omaha, and since then have really expanded and deepened our relationship with many women religious communities across the country. And likewise, they have presence and properties and assets in different communities. And so we partner with them very regularly, oftentimes repositioning, doing an adaptive reuse of maybe an old convent, a facility on one of their campuses, and converting those to new affordable housing. So it's very exciting partnerships that we have in communities across the country.
That 1981 group there, are you in regular contact with them, or, those were the original pioneers here? Are they on your board?
Yes, we have the original founding sponsors who continue to serve on our board, provide great leadership, great strategic thinking, and bring relationships that help us advance our mission. 25% of our board of trustees are represented by women religious communities.
Well, that's fantastic. They really probably are very proud of the legacy that they started. And so I know that that is a value added for your team there. Speaking of which, you're currently hiring for a senior vice president of racial equity, diversity, and inclusion. Is that a newly created position?
The position is new, yes, and we are excited to be out across the country recruiting for the best, the brightest to join our team. But the work that we're doing through our racial equity, diversity, and inclusion initiatives, READY, has been going on for several years at Mercy Housing. Several years back, we really recognized the importance of racial equity, of being a diverse organization, of being inclusive in the work we do, both internally and in the communities. And so the commitment to this work has been there and is built into our strategic plan over the next 5 years. It's kind of informs a lot of the work that we're doing. What we recognize this year with the killing of George Floyd, with the protests and demonstrations and the calls for really bringing down the barriers that are imposed by long term systemic racism, housing discrimination that has existed in many communities, we realize that we really need to invest more in those efforts and bring some internal leadership and focus to that work. And that's why we accelerated really our timeline for bringing on a senior vice president for our racial equity, diversity, inclusion work within the organization. And so I'm very excited to be able to add that person to my leadership team later this year.
It sounds like that's an externally facing position, in the industry, not just a position that is internally driven, because you mentioned that it's linked to your strategic plan. What are some of the other goals for this position?
Well, among the focuses and the work that we are launching internally that this person will help to lead and to make sure that we can be both transparent and accountable to ensure that when we go out to do a real estate development project, how we engage with the community, how we select a site, how we bring our resident voice into that project, into that development, that it's inclusive, that it's equitable, and that we're doing it in a very in a way that really is empowering communities that for many years have been disempowered and their voices not heard. So it's important, in every aspect of the work we do, from our real estate development to our housing leases and our housing programs, and even in how we engage our residents in designing, developing new programs and new initiatives. We want to make sure that our ear is there, grounded in our residents' experience and their voice, and that they're co-creating with us new programs and new initiatives that are most responsive to what their needs are.
This sounds like a fantastically comprehensive position. It's got so much of that resident component, community empowerment, and then just that internal accountability. This is great for an organization, and it's one of the many reasons why we've got you on this podcast as a change maker. But then, you also realize that this should be core practices for many, many organizations. This should not be a change maker moment. This should be just a
Right.
standard as a CFO.
Absolutely. And I think we're building on the work that has been done over the years, internally, particularly through things like affirmative action hiring, things like how and where and with who we spend our money, and making sure that we're working with minority, small business, women owned enterprises to give them that first start in growing their business, especially with a large organization like ourselves. How we're doing hiring of residents, something we were very successful at with the Denver Housing Authority through the federal Section 3 program, is just a model for how, when we come into a community and we're going to invest dollars in building a new building, standing up a new program, we really should think about who we're engaging in that, who we're hiring, who we're contracting with, and making sure that the capital that we're investing in that community is having double or triple bottom line impact.
Mm-hmm. Mercy Housing recently penned an article on fair housing, just exactly what we're talking about here, really focusing on social justice, economic justice, and I believe that the title had Welcoming into the Suburbs. For those who may not understand, why is that even an obstacle? Why is that not happening? What does this article, why is this so important? I read it, I shared it, I had my team read it, but in your words, what does this mean?
When we're talking about social justice, at Mercy Housing, we believe that housing justice is social justice, because having a safe, stable home in a neighborhood that offers opportunities and has services and amenities that every one of us needs and deserves to have, that is social justice, because that's where everything starts. Housing is the beginning, it's not an end to a person's life goals and their quality of life, but it starts there. And in this country, historically, there have been racist, systemic barriers placed to many families to access those places through redlining, through FHA covenants that were required and when suburbs were being developed. But over the decades, there's been much work, and Mercy certainly has had much success in our suburban communities with our suburban leaders, partners, and residents, and really building wonderful communities, wonderful new housing communities for people who are frontline workers, people who work in the service industry, who want to live and work in the same community that they're a part of, want to raise their kids there, want to be part of the school system, and they're doing that very successfully. We have wonderful communities. I visited some here in my first 90 days as new CEO, and just seeing how impactful those affordable housing communities are in suburbs as they are in cities and in rural communities that we serve. So this is an important step toward breaking down the old patterns of discrimination, old patterns of segregation, and getting to our goal of a more integrated, diverse, and really successful communities across the country.
What I like about what you said is, yes, we can all agree, hopefully, right, across the nation, that housing justice is social justice, but housing can be such a launch for economic empowerment. and individual empowerment. And what I like about what you've done is you actually moved past the rhetoric or the analysis of that, but you actually taken programming and access and applied that to be a success metrics. For example, your connection between housing and healthcare has led you to spearhead many transformative programs like Youth Employment Academy, Healthy Living Initiatives, Connect Home Denver, West Denver Renaissance Collaborative. What are some of those best success stories in those spaces that stand out for you?
I would definitely say two areas that I'm particularly proud of. One is the work we've done with disengaged youth, because that is so important to have early interventions in the lives of youth who've experienced trauma, have had life experiences that really, create their own barriers to their success, to their self-confidence. And by engaging youth, especially through work like we were doing through the Youth Employment Academy, where they're not just being served, they're actually being engaged in social enterprises, in running businesses, in having responsibility to clients, but also making them part of a larger industry where they can have a future and a career and have that exposure has been amazing. We in Colorado, the creative industries is the third or fourth largest industry in the state. At least it was before COVID, and we were really engaging that industry in a way that kids felt that they could be successful and see a future for themselves there. And then obviously our work with healthcare providers and healthcare partners has been very impactful, both in improving quality of life and health outcomes for families, but that is just a leading edge of ensuring that somebody will do well in school, will complete their education if they have good health outcomes, if they have healthy places to live, to be active. And seniors and our disabled community, our veterans, for them to have more direct access to a healthcare provider has eliminated trips to the emergency room, has reduced instances of chronic health conditions that lead to long-term inability to be productive, and have a long, healthy, independent lifestyle. I think those two definitely are the work that I'm most proud of, and that I see the potential to scale, to replicate, and have those same kind of programs that we were doing in Denver be replicated and expanded to other communities where they're also needed.
First of all, thank you for all your inspirational words. And second, we have to take a break right here. But coming up in part 2 of my interview with Ismael Guerrero, the president and CEO at Mercy Housing, we talk about the challenges we see as the country heads into recovery mode.
We're also seeing the importance of internet connectivity and really the priority of closing the digital divide, of making the internet access equal to a utility. It should be there in every home, the way heat, gas, and water is available in every home.
Thanks for listening to Changemakers with Katie Gore. To find out more about Katie, go to quadel.com. That's QUADEL.com. This has been a production of Forbes Books Radio.